And then I'll just lay there. And then it's like, okay, well, 6:30 or so, and my border collies are in the room with me, and then they're just passed out, right? And so I get up and I do this regime of stretching and yoga and stuff in the morning, and so I start doing that. And the dogs are just like, dude, just like chill out, man. We're not ready to get up yet.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll take the dogs out after that for a little stroll and make
Are
some
you are
coffee.
you thinking about work as soon as you wake up, and then it's like, or do you have a kind of a preparatory routine in the morning that gets you ready to jump into your day?
Well, the preparatory routine is for me to get up and do my, stretching and yoga.
Yeah.
And that really wakes me up and gets me going. So, I get up and I do that. And then I will take the dogs for a stroll and come back in, make some coffee. And then I'll usually read for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then turn the internet on because we turn the internet off at night
Nice.
and get on there and see what's up and
Mhm.
check some email and do that kind of thing. So,
Okay.
and get into it.
Yeah.
Is that sleep pattern, is it 3:45 AM on the dot,
No, I mean,
consistently?
usually, well, yeah, it's around 3:45, 4:30,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. And then friends of mine say, well, you might want to just get up and meditate. If you're waking up that early in the morning,
Yeah.
you probably should just meditate and see what that's all about, see what's happening on that.
Mhm.
So, yeah. But the funny thing you say, do I immediately get up and work? Well, a lot of times I'll start, if I'm waking up like that, I will start thinking about detailing a lot of
Yeah.
times,
Sure.
but that really calms me down.
Mm.
And so thinking through situations, and when I was much younger, actually, when we're just super, super freaking busy in the studio, that I would make a conscious effort at the end of the evening when I was going to bed that I would start to think intensely about things.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then I would a lot of times wake up in the morning and be able to, or in the middle of the night, have a pad and,
Yeah.
draw something down, but I would resolve the situation I was thinking about. But I
Yeah.
would do that really intentionally because I just had so much to do and so much to get through
Yeah.
that I really need to try to use that time also.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting because I will go through the same painful sleep patterns and wake up at like it's a crazy time. It could be 2:23, it could be 3:35, but I'll do it consistently
Mm.
for a little bit more than a week,
Mm.
and it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it
And
is.
and what you just said is kind of interesting because if you do all of that heavy brain thought before you go to sleep, then perhaps you go to bed without too much to think about because you've already like riggered your mind in a way that maybe exhausts you. But um, that we typically will start with a somewhat of a small intro, but um, MJ Neal, highly decorated architect, good friend, both regionally and internationally. And man, you've had so much success in multiple scales. You've been published many times. You've had all these awards, and you've been a professor at wonderful universities. And like this common thread of what you do is in terms of rigor, and you just spoke a little bit about it, is is really incredible because you don't. I don't know that you see that a whole lot these days, and I'm real curious how you started following that pattern in terms of this rigor of continuing an idea or resolving an idea all the way through. And we all know sitting in this room that that it's difficult just to get anything built,
Indeed.
whether it's looks like beauty or a piece of shit. Like it's
Indeed.
difficult.
Yeah.
So you layer on top the intensity of this idea and the amount of leadership that you have to provide in order to lead the team, the client,
Mm.
budget, schedules. Where'd that come from?
That's a good question, man. Wow. Well, I tell you, a lot of times I think about this lecture that I saw with Donald Judd back in, must have been early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And he said something in that lecture that I took away that I think about actually quite often. And it was, somebody asked the question, "Oh, well, you know, how can you do these things that you're doing?" Yada yada. And he said, "Well, you have to get to the place where you can do your own work."
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. And so back in about 97, I think it was 97, that my wife and I, my wife's filmmaker, Vivian for years now, filmmaker, poet, writer. She made her living as an actress for many years. Kind of a Renaissance person, actually. So we made a decision that we either had, she just had a baby, she just had her son. And it was like, okay, I've either got to go back to into the corporate world, and she was saying the same thing because she comes from advertising as well. So we can make a living that way, or we have to double down and try to do our own development work. And so we had made that decision to figure that out. I mean, no real decision had been made, but we were like, okay, yeah. And then like, okay, I think we really need to try to figure out some way to do our own work. And we ended up going to Europe, taking our son to Europe to see, her family, because she's from Barcelona. And so we take our son to, see the family over there. And I had met a doctor recently sitting at a bar at Manuel's downtown. I know all those guys down there for many, many years, the Manuel's owners. And so we had talked about doing some development work. He was really interested in it. And I'll be damned if, we made that decision. We went to Europe, we came back. And of course, that's when we had phone machines, we saw these phones and stuff. There was a message from him saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this lot over in Lakeway and doing something." And that started us off on that.
Okay.
So that was pretty interesting. And then we I lived in Bolden, which when it was the hood, it was the real hood. My car would get gang graffiti on it and stuff. And it was just incredible.
Yeah.
And we had identified some lots there, some infill lots, and we got an investor to invest in those lots, and that kind of kicked it off. Not the doctor, actually. We started doing something for him in Lakeway, and then another investor started doing stuff with us in Bolden. And then that's what happened. And then getting back to the intensity thing of it is because we were able to start doing our own work, I could really control the process and control what I wanted to get done. And that there's a lot of stuff about contemporary architecture in Austin back then and what was going on or what was not going on, really. So it's just kind of fun. My wife and I talk about all the time, man, we need to really write a book about the stuff that was going on back in the day, because people now don't really understand what's going on. Because I think, it was us and a couple of other development outfits in that area. Only one other outfit was doing contemporary work that was there. And so I think what we had heard from the students at the university when we go talk there is that was really helping them to understand there might be another way to go do work and to do contemporary work, which really wasn't that much being done at that time.
I was going to say, and again, not living in that world, get in terms of design and that kind of thing until just recently, right? But I lived in Dallas, is where I grew up.
Me too.
And you didn't see that in other cities, right? That kind of concentration of that type of design and development that you did in Austin over the last 20-something years, like you didn't see that anywhere else, right?
Texas is tough, man. Texas is a tough town.
Yeah.
Tough state, I should say. Yeah. And Austin's a tough town. All the towns are tough. You'd see things here and there.
Yeah.
But you really would have to look for them.
Yeah.
There now of course there's, stuff in all over Dallas that's being done and all over
Mhm.
here and all over Houston. But back then, no, it was hard.
Mhm.
You really had to seek it out.
Mhm.
But it was around, but
Mhm.
just not like it is now. I mean, now everybody and their dog, is trying to do
Sure.
contemporary work. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And to some chagrin, I would say, actually, because there's probably nothing worse than contemporary, bad contemporary.
Well, now it's washed out, and I
Yeah.
mean, I'm pretty proud of Austin. We do have a prominent design culture, and I think it sets itself apart. So being a part of the city and the growth of it, even back to 2005, it's changed.
Oh my goodness.
When I moved here in 2005, and but whenever I moved here, you're one of the top dogs that I thought, man, this guy's just killing it. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
And luckily, we got a chance to meet
Yeah.
and hit it off. But um, prior to 1997, what were your struggles, and there were probably some things back then that you had to go through professionally, personally, that then led you to this moment where you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna, I have to make a clean break, or I'm gonna go insane, or
Yeah. Well, I can tell you exactly what it was. Is I was sitting I've been fortunate. So I was working for a pretty small firm here in town, still, and they're still around in downtown, sitting at a bay window is my little table, my drafting desk and stuff. I got a phone call from my insurance agent, a young man that was we were young then, right? It was probably 30, 33, I guess, 33. And so he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about doing a house for me." And went over and we agreed on doing this house and setting the fee and yada, yada, yada. So I came back to the office and I was working on this project there, and that was when the architect came up with the concept, would give it to me, I would take it, and I would actually figure out how to make this thing work, right? And so I was telling him, look, this is going to cost a lot more than you think it's going to cost. And well, he wasn't listening. Later on, he said, "Oh, I thought that's because you had been working in California and came back and the prices were so." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, man." Anyway, the price came back really high, and other stuff was going on in that office. I just had it. And after that happened, I remember taking the Dillo. That's back when the Dillo was running, right? Taking the Dillo back to the car lot to get my car and thinking, I'm done. And came back to the office the next day and it's like, you guys got 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Did you have a plan, or did you just?
Well, the thing is that no, I had that one house to do,
Yeah.
which was, I think the fee was like $8,000 or something. I mean, it was just like no freaking money. But that back then it was okay. So no, I just had that thing. That was it. That was going on, and I was just going to figure it out.
Mhm.
But I was done with the corporate world. I mean, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I was done with doing work that I wasn't interested in, and that I didn't think was actually going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I can remember taking a small project that I really didn't want to take, but I was desperate for money, right?
Mhm.
And it was something that you could draft in literally probably 2 hours. It was just nothing. And it took me 2 weeks sitting there, and I was getting physically ill. And I was like, no more of this.
Yeah.
And that stopped it. And then I thought, I will do whatever I need to do to make money, but I'm not going to do this kind of stuff anymore. I just can't not do it. It's making me physically ill. And subsequently, I ended up working on roofs and hanging signs for money and working some construction stuff, doing that kind of stuff because I just couldn't deal with.
Sure. Was the illness because you didn't believe in it? Like you didn't believe in what the project was about?
Probably it was probably that, and that, yeah, I just didn't want to do it. It was just making me ill.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Just can't do it. And so it gets back to the rigor. So at that same time, there would be times when really no architectural work was going on, but I would still think, man, I got to go design something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd go up to my little studio, up my little spiral staircase and then the attic basically, and get on my drafting board and just draw stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I took the time to read my, it was funny when I first moved back to Austin. This is back in 89 or 90, that my girlfriend at the time, I was reading Kandinsky. And I remember being on the sofa reading Kandinsky one day, and I was working at Whole Earth Provision Company, like selling climbing gear and shit. And my girlfriend comes in and she's like, dude, you got to get a job. You got to stop reading Kandinsky and get a job. And I was like, and I thought that was so funny. You got to stop reading Kandinsky and get a job. And so I called these guys I was just telling you about, and because there was no work. I mean, there was finally starting to be work again.
Yeah, Austin was pretty slow back
Oh my
then.
goodness, it was. You know, when I left Austin and went to California, it was right before the bust. That bust at that point, and when I came back, it was right when things just had started to come back up, but people still weren't hiring. I'd happened to do a few interviews and had a pretty good interview with this firm, and but they were like, oh, I don't know, we're waiting for some work, and I gave them a call. And they said, oh, well, we're thinking about calling you because we just had some work, and so anyway, I went into and worked with them for a couple of years. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of this real diversion of getting back to just trying to be rigorous about the work, but it was just making that decision to the work I wanted to do. That I really wanted to be an architect's architect, right?
Right. Yeah.
And put the rigor into the work and try to understand, what that meant, and just crank on stuff.
Did you ever, did you have anybody in your life that was what I guess now we'd call a mentor, or someone that you thought,
You bet.
oh,
You bet.
who is that?
Well, the thing is, my grandfather was an architect,
Mm.
and my uncle was an architect,
Mm.
and my grandfather was a builder also. My dad ends up being a builder later on. And then there was a gentleman in LA that I went to work for, and he was so into the work, his work, and we'd have this incredible, lovely conversations about architecture and the work. And he and his wife really invited me into their lives, and that was just a wonderful situation. It was super small. It was him, it was me. We had a person that came in to work with us occasionally, and that was it. And he just let me run, basically. I mean, they would go to Europe. His wife was from Finland, and they would go to freaking Europe for a couple of months or whatever. And I'd stay in the studio, and he'd call me once a week. Hey, what's going on? How's everything going? Oh, it's good, man. I just sit there and draft, just draw and draft, and go out to the job site if I need to, answer the phone, this kind of thing. It was a loft space in downtown LA, right off of San Pedro. And I mean, it was crazy down there then. I mean, that's where all the homeless people were down there. It was rugged. And so there was other artists that were in that building. So I go talk to one guy, his name was David Amico. And he said, yeah, when I start getting down about things, I just take a walk around the block and see all these folks that are down there. I come back and I'm fired up. It's like, it's a pretty good.
Yeah, that's right.
Motivation.
Humbling.
Yeah.
Here's where you could be.
Anyway, that was, that gentleman, Frank Fitzgibbons, he was a wonderful mentor to me. And so that was That was really good. You know, opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
What do you think makes a good mentor? Like what do you remember taking from him that you carried with you?
for me, it was that he was so excited about the work that he was doing, and he was 48, I guess, at the time. But he was just super excited about the work and about doing the work. And I was excited about architecture and doing really good work. And so to see somebody that that's really what his focus was doing excellent work. And that's what excited me.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be around that, um, it's like, yeah, okay, we're going to work hard, but that's all right. Because we want to do really good work. And to do really good work, usually you have to work really hard. I mean, there's not really any special formula about
Yeah.
it. You just you get down and you start to work. And that's, I mean, I know people that are extremely talented and they don't have to work that much. They can kind of get by because they're just so freaking smart.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew it was like, I've got to work my ass off to get shit done. And so, and plus I just love it. I don't know why. It's kind of this weird thing, right? That
Yeah.
you just fall into something that you happen to really love. And it's not like it's work then. It's, I don't know what it's like. Maybe it's like meditation in some ways, sometimes. I mean, obviously there's pain involved, especially in this business, this profession.
100%. I was gonna say there's something special that comes from the struggle and the torment of being in the middle of a project, having to do the work. Like you said, it's different when somebody's very, very talented. And I'm speaking from somebody that I don't think I'm that talented. My ambition outweighs my ability.
I'm just stubborn.
Yeah, but it's like that torment kind of it something beautiful comes out of that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, this is a struggle. I mean, what? Well, like you were saying earlier, I mean, it's hard to get anything built, really. And to get something of quality built, to get something of excellence built, I mean, there's some struggle in that. And there's some pain that goes through it because there's pain in a lot of it.
Yeah.
And there's, oh my goodness. There's plenty of drudgery that goes with it also, besides the pain. So you just gotta find some kind of I don't even know what the word would be, but just you know that going through the drudgery is going to get you to someplace. Right? I mean, I used to worry when I was a young designer about stuff. I go, oh my God, I can't design anymore. I go through these mental blocks.
Writer's block.
But you just work through that stuff, right? So you work, you keep drawing and you keep sketching and you keep building little physical models and you take them apart and you put them back together and whatever. And sooner or later you're gonna figure this stuff out. But it's painful. I don't really have that pain like that anymore. I know that if I continue to work, that these things are going to get resolved.
How do you know when you're done? So when you're designing something,
you're never done.
Well, then when do you stop?
When you can. But seriously, it's.
I like this question. That there's two parts. How do you know when you're done? And that can go wherever you want it to go. But then how do you know that it's been successful?
Those are really good questions. I think sometimes you think you're done, but you're not. And so it takes some time to sit on something and realize that it can go further. But working through whatever situation there is, I think one comes to realize certain markers, perhaps, about that situation that comes to a resolution, and you know that thing is resolved. So you can stop at that point if you need to. Is it successful? That's a really loaded question. That may be different for other, different people. But in I think the case of architecture, if it's successful, if people actually interact with it in a positive way,
Mm-hmm.
then it's successful. If it does what I can only speak for myself, if the whatever the thing is doing what I intended it to do, then for me that's successful. Mostly though, I think it has to be because architecture is for people, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. Is it more about you,
no,
or is it's about?
absolutely not. Absolutely. If I do something and it's not received well by the people who are going to use it, that's not successful. That's a failure.
But
And it
can
can
you?
be this most beautiful, incredible, interesting thing, but if people aren't going to use it
But what
and
if you
engage
love it
with
and
it,
nobody else does? See, this is. I'm not a
yeah.
creative guy, right? And so, I wonder about these. I know it's probably different for everybody, but there's there's a conflict there, right? Because you have to love it, or at the end, or else you wouldn't keep doing it. This is my story.
Mm-hmm.
And so some level of you got to be okay if people don't like it. But at the same time, you're doing it for other people.
Well, I think there's always going to be the case where you have people that aren't necessarily going to like what you do, and then some people are, and some people may be, uh, uh, carried over by it, right? I mean, I can probably almost every project that I've done, there's people that have hated it,
Yeah.
right? And there's people that have loved it.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, I can think of really any number, really just about every project I've done. I've had, people have really liked it and people have really hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, at least you're getting some movement with that
Mm-hmm.
because maybe if you don't have some people that really hate it, maybe you really haven't done anything.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. That's what I was going to say. I think you need that love-hate relationship or feedback in order to make you better.
Mm.
Right? What if everybody loved what you
Yeah.
do? You would never get to the next step in terms of, whatever ladder you're trying to create. But if you always have someone that's really, questioning really what you're doing, then I think that's more profound or more there's more opportunity there.
And people come into things with different biases and different ideas about how things should be, right?
Yeah.
And so those cultural issues that start to come into all of this stuff. And some people want to drag a farmhouse from out in the country into the city and plop it down and refurbish it and redo it on one of these infill lots. Whereas I wanted to come and put contemporary urban suburban hybrid things on there and show how we could live in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very specific. This really was happening. Somebody was bringing farmhouses in, plopping them down in these lots, fixing those up. She hated what we were doing. And we were coming in and doing these suburban urban hybrids to try to show a different way to live. But at the same time, I want to show how there are possibilities of these very small contained lots could be really utilized fully.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we were very concerned with community and trying to get community to grow again. Well, that same neighborhood, which is Bolden, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
well, all the community stuff that we try to design within the projects, that never happened. Maybe it happened for a very little while, but now you see that everybody's putting up fences. They don't want that interaction because two of the houses, the Twin Peaks houses, they both had screened-in porches that addressed the street. Because I thought, man, it'd be great. And I lived in one of those houses for a while. And it'd be great. And I probably spent 80% of my time out on that screen porch.
Mm-hmm.
And people would come by and really you go, hey, man, what's going on? Because at that point, people were starting to walk again in the neighborhoods. Women felt comfortable running in the neighborhoods, things like that. Because it was it had been the hood, but it was
Yeah.
changing. And of course, the proximity downtown, a 20-minute walk,
Mhm.
it was incredible. And that was really great. But the people who bought the Twin Peaks to the east, they immediately put a fence up. The people that end up buying the other one, they immediately put all this giant landscaping up in front. So then that all of a sudden that interaction to develop with community is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how we got off on that tangent.
It's interesting too, because the people will like it and hate it for various reasons, like you guys are saying, and oftentimes they don't like it because of an aesthetic taste, right?
Sure.
Which is all subjective, right?
Yeah.
I don't like the color red, and I like blue better. Well, now I hate this thing. But I think you've got to have more conviction than that whenever we're out in the public, and because all of what we do is out in the public.
Oh, yeah.
It's interaction, and so there's a deeper concept or a deeper drive in order to, whether it be programming or experience or this or that, there's got to be something deeper that you're after in order for you to feel good about what you're putting on the ground.
Mm.
And that's what you're saying. And a lot of times when we create, we obviously want it to look sexy. We want it to look good, but the real momentum behind it is this, this wayfinding, this experience, this thing. It doesn't, and we're not even thinking about what it looks like yet, or what color it is, or we're thinking about texture. We're thinking about this stuff that's going to create this moment which keeps you coming back. And and when you find that, whether it's on paper or in the built environment, because they're a little bit different, those methods of when you're done, when you find that in your own mind, then I think you've arrived at a thing of being done. Whether or not your detailing is complete, or the construction is complete, and you got something pulled out because it was over budget. Those things are artificial in a way, because you've still achieved this this placement, or this threshold, or this thing, right? That no matter how it gets painted, it's still going to be there. It's still baked in.
Have you ever been to Crystal Bridges?
I haven't. No.
Have you been? Did you guys go when you were in?
Oh, we did. Yeah.
Bentonville? Did you go to that Frank Lloyd Wright?
Yeah,
Wright
we
house?
did. Yeah.
So again, I'm not a student of his, and that's really the only project that I've been in. And that was a house that they moved from New Jersey out to Arkansas and rebuilt. They've got this really cool timeline of how they've moved that. And again, I'm not a creative guy. I'm a contractor. I'm a spreadsheet, But when I walked in that house and I walked around, like, I was overwhelmed by the architecture of that house. There's this living area that opens up into this little kitchen, and like the mullions of the windows align with the trusses up top, align with these dormer windows, aligns with the bookcase, aligns with the cushions in the couch, aligns with the score marks in the concrete. It's like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And the rooms are small, but you could tell there was intention behind every detail in that house.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. Like, and you feel that.
You bet.
And again, I can't articulate what that is or why that is, because I don't do what you guys do.
You don't need to.
But
you feel it, and
what
it's
is
articulating it.
But why do I feel that way?
Because it's incredible. I mean,
Go deeper.
You hit on a really great word, and that's intention.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There's intention behind that. And there's really intention behind everything. People just don't realize that.
Yeah.
And they don't, I mean, I used to talk about this in studio all the time, is that you start to place things together, and there's actually intention with that, but you don't notice it. So you don't try to develop that in a conscious way. All that stuff you're talking about, that's consciously thought about.
Yeah.
And there is intention behind that. But it's not only that intention to have this little datum that moves through this thing, but it's the tension to create the space to make it warm and human and intimate, for instance, right? That's appropriate for that thing. So all these things are thought about. Then all the care, not only of thinking about that thing, but the care of the people who are actually building that thing.
Yeah.
Because you think about what it takes, what it takes to get some datum to come through like that, because you've got different trades that work on this thing to be able to make that thing happen.
Yeah.
And all those people get behind that. And this is a really interesting thing that happens on job sites like that, where there is intention behind so much of this stuff, is because you will have the workers get so excited and so franchised with the building, with the architecture, that they get excited. And, I've had people on the site, probably recovering crack addicts, that will ask their mothers to come out to the site to look at the work they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, then you've probably done something because you've excited somebody, right? Because of the intention that's behind that.
Yeah. And if you've enlisted them into that vision, right?
Well, that's right. You've got to franchise people in that.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful story about that. Sorry.
No, this is great.
There's, so I was down in San Antonio with John Grable, and Vivian was with us. So John Grable used to work for Lake Flato down there. And John was taking us through one of the last projects that he worked on before he went out on his own, which is the park by the Riverwalk. And we were going through it, and we were the only people there, with the exception of one homeless man that was there. And the homeless man came up to us and was talking to us about the fish that he would catch in the river and put in one of the troughs there and raise the fish until they were big enough to put back in there, so hopefully they didn't get eaten as minnows. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness, this guy is totally franchised. This park has totally franchised this guy with the city. He feels a part of the city now.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing lesson for me for that. It's like, oh my goodness, here is somebody that's destitute that has become franchised with the city because of a piece of architecture. It has enabled him to be able to engage in something that he thinks is worthwhile.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And so I'm always thinking about this thing, about how do you get people franchised with the projects you're doing, the city, these kind of things.
We've talked about the pitch, and we had a level of that with that project.
Yeah, lovely project.
Yeah. Right? I mean, the city officials, I haven't seen inspectors excited to come out on a project like we did there.
Plan reviewers.
Because they were scratching their head about stuff. I mean, because we were doing things that weren't conventional, right? And they didn't check the box of what they normally see, especially when you get into the MEP and all that stuff that we were trying to fit in these boxes and all that. And those guys were legitimately like happy to come out there and be
awesome.
like, hey, what are we trying to solve today, guys? Okay, and they went so far as to inspect and pass things partially, and just kind of, again, it was not in the mold of what they're used to doing because of that project. And I think that added to a lot of the success.
Well, see, this is really great point. And that's really awesome. I've been talking about this for years, is that none of these folks, so you got the architect, you got the contractor, you got the city with the inspectors and the building department, all this, and everybody wants to fight.
Yeah.
It's like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
We're all trying to get to the same place. We want a beautiful city. We want beautiful buildings that people can enjoy and be proud of. We all need to work together to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
So let's all get on the same page, and we'll sit down, we'll talk about all this stuff. It doesn't have to be contentious, but everybody, they're trying to take away my idea. It's like, that's just silly.
Yeah.
It's like, let's just get together and talk about stuff. And projects like the pitch Well, what a beautiful example of like, let's work together to make this thing happen and have a real asset for the city. That's what it should be about.
Yeah.
Why do you think that this occasion, the occasion that we're talking about, why do you think that's so rare?
Well, for one thing, I think the majority of the work coming through is mediocre. For one thing, probably the big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, most of the work is, I hate to use the cliche, but they're phoning it in.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so, what's there to be excited about?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, personally, I'd rather stay in bed.
Yeah.
I enjoy my sleep when I can get it. But no, seriously, I mean, it's
Everybody's checking the box.
well, everybody's checking the box, and then and maybe because that is a project that's going to become an asset for the city, that they felt like they can get behind that because it's not an exclusive thing. Because you have these projects that are not you, but I mean, just in general, there are projects that are very expensive houses, for instance. Well, not everybody's going to be able to enjoy that house. So I don't know if the inspectors or whoever, feel like, yeah, it's just another, some more rich people or whatever that does this. And I think that comes back maybe to what I was talking about earlier about trying to engage the community on things. And that project certainly engages the community. Yeah. And so if you can, capture the imagination of people, which that project certainly did in many different levels, that it probably becomes easier to have people franchised with the project and get on board to make a beautiful thing happen. But I think it's starting with that attitude of, hey, look, I'm not trying to fight you. I need your help.
Yeah.
I really need, and seriously, I need your help.
Yeah.
To get stuff done. And let's get some cool stuff done. Let's get some beautiful stuff that everybody can feel proud of done. Because otherwise, we're just wasting our time. It's just a freaking waste of, all this stuff. I'm so incensed with around where I live. So I live right at the edge of Spicewood and Lakeway. And of course, they've just scraped the hill country. It's not the hill country anymore. Once you scrape it, it's not the hill country anymore. And they just put up these really unfortunate houses that are around there, and they changed the landscaping and they put on this water and all these water intensive plantings and stuff. Well, we're in the middle of a fucking drought. What are you thinking? Right? And then it's just, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. But anyway, that's just stupid, quite honestly. And who can really get behind that?
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, most people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Right? They're moving in from wherever, going, oh, okay, I'm coming out here. And some of the interiors of the houses, they work pretty well, whatever, and they get a view and they have a big kitchen and, they're big bedrooms and all this, which is interesting to come back to what you were saying about, the rooms were small and yada, yada, in the Frankel Lloyd Wright house.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden that was probably, I don't know what that square footage of that house was, maybe 2,500
Pretty
square
small.
feet or so.
Maybe. Yeah.
All right. And so you've got houses out there. So I would say the norm for these projects out there are probably, 3,500, 4,000 square feet. That's a lot of freaking house, man. Not including the garage and the patio and
They
whatever.
want space for space sake. That's more about, I think some people,
because it's so badly designed, they don't realize it. They think they need space for space sake because it's so badly designed.
Yeah.
If it was well designed, you don't need that space.
True. Yeah.
Who needs 3 freaking places to eat?
Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
Yeah, my wife and I were having a conversation. We're going through kind of a half remodel of our house, and I started thinking, I really only engage with like 3 areas of this house. That's it. A bathroom, my bedroom, and I've got one place and an office. 4. I've got an office and then a place where I sit at the table and read and stuff like that. There's other parts of the house I don't even engage. Yeah. If they weren't there, it wouldn't affect my life one bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. See but that's coming to a realization about that. People don't come to these realizations. at all. Oh my God, I can't live in 2,000 square feet. That's way too small.
Yeah. I think the developers have a responsibility with that too, and I
Sure.
can speak to that. I've done 2 spec homes, one of which we did with Mark, but the first consideration is financial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, how can we, what's the quickest, easiest, most efficient way we can get an adequate return on this project?
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of the decisions, not so much on the house we did together, but the first one. And then all the decision tree out of that really sprung from, let's try to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happens is like, well, this neighborhood, how can we maximize the footage on this lot that's going to make it attractive for this certain home buyer, right? So it was all, the last decision was intentionality around
Mm-hmm.
design
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think there's some responsibility to developers too.
Well, it's all throughout the industry, man. I mean, it's there needs to be reform on it, and it's not only the developers, but it's the banking, it's the
Marketing.
Yeah, I mean, the bank,
It's
the banking
cyclical.
aspect of it has a huge
Yeah.
impact on how things happen.
Yeah.
Right, because there's a certain form that the estimator comes out and they'll start to look at and deal with stuff. And if it doesn't meet up and match the bank's FHA stuff or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
the bank's not going to loan you the money for the house.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've had this happen on projects where we're trying to take square footage out. We're putting in a screen porch and all this, and it's great. We're pulling things down. It's really smart sustainably, right? And that's another can of worms to open up. But this is pretty, quite a while back, mid 2000s, I guess. And the banks just were not going to loan them money because there wasn't enough air conditioned square footage in the project.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are trying to pull the air conditioned square footage out to be smart and be conscientious.
Mm-hmm.
No, man.
Well, there's a thing that we continuously struggle over, no matter if it's a small or large project, multifamily or mixed use versus a single family, is it is the banks, but it's also the fear of someone not liking it, right? Because it doesn't check the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't check the box, what's going to happen then? Is no one going to like it? Then I can't sell. I mean, that's a real fear that we struggle with all the time. And no matter what industry, I think there's there's a certain level of I don't know, whether it's breaking the system or it's following the system, there's a pathway, right? And I do feel that we get complacent, and we're building because it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
We're operating in our industry because it's normal. And to figure out why, I mean, to always ask the question about why is this normal? Why do we need this thing when we don't use it? Or why do we have to seek this person's approval or check this box or go through this meaningless pathway? Just, those questions, I don't think they're asked enough.
Mm-hmm.
And we are getting lazy and therefore, we have a less of a buy-in whenever we go through these things. We're just checking the box.
Mm-hmm.
And, when from my perspective, I can't say that all of our projects are poetic and do the things that I hope that they would all do, because I'm also nervous about paying the bills and
Absolutely.
and I do want to grow the office, and I want all these things that means that, man, I really have to walk the walk and play the subtle game of moving outside the normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a slow moving needle versus like trying to be very persistent and intentional about every move. It's a real struggle continuously.
You bet. You bet it is.
So I think, for me, where do you have these small victories that that are going to slightly increase and you can build upon. So it's a slow moving game that we are all playing.
Yeah.
And that to try to do what we do and then also parallel that with making money is so hard because our brains are not immediately thinking about what's going to make me the most money. It's how can I get the best out of this project no matter what? And I'm going to work my ass off with this rigor and this idea and this intentionality that, I always point back to how we're educated, right? And I know our brains are all work differently for various reasons in order for us to do what we can do. But if we could mix that intentionality with how are we efficient, or how do we make money, or how does this thing build on top of something that we know has to exist in terms of the teams that we have to create, the budgets that we have to create, the budgets that we have to maintain, and knowing if we don't understand that process, then it's going to get yanked and it's going to look like shit. And it's not like all this work is going to go for nothing. And I don't know, I know you're an educator too. And I think that, there's something there that I don't feel that we're being educated to properly think about.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a complex road and path, for all this stuff to happen. And for people to be educated within 5 years with all of this stuff, I don't think it's possible. I mean, and that's why there's an internship, or there used to be an internship and all this stuff to be able to help people to understand this thing. But no, it's a lifelong process, and people work these things out differently.
Yeah.
You got Frank Gehry, who a lot of people don't realize, but there's a whole separate entity that are doing parking garages and things like that, and that's making money so he can do the beautiful project he likes to do. Hey, that's awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
You
got to put the formula together.
And because he's got a big crew.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big nut every month that you've got to, shell and give to all the folks.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't realize how much money it takes to run an office. I mean, it's, with 5 people, it's a lot of money. Yeah. I mean, you think about, you got 200 folks, that's a big nut.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible to think about the billing that has to happen to be able to pay all those folks, right? Yeah. Besides all the whatever else, dental and medical and insurance and whatever. Yeah, it's incredible. So but you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think many people are really aware of the realities of what this profession is and how complicated it can be to just try to get a piece of work done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, trying to make a living. You got a kid, you got your partner, everybody's working their ass off. You're trying to take care of the kid. I mean, you're always putting in more hours than, you think you were going to always. And so you're making less money. And it's just like, it's a tightrope act for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people somehow can get to a place where they have an alternative income as well. And I think that's a real viable way to try to deal with stuff. But there's a lot of people that make a lot of money off of it. But it's we could go down a rabbit hole on that. But
yeah, well, I always think of about the contractor's brain versus the architect's brain. Like we both have businesses. One may be successful in certain realms, one may be successful in others. But those brains are real. The brains about how you how you approach it. Not that anyone is looking for a lesser end result,
Yeah.
but the brain is real interesting because, like, if you could merge the two, you would find this, oh moment.
Yeah.
Well, it's the priorities, right? The priorities become totally different
True.
in that. And so how do you get the priorities to align
Mm-hmm.
to get the common goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got different situations. You have some situations where you have really super high budgets. You got other situations where if you're doing some kind of development project that, speculative project will, your brains are probably going to be aligned a lot closer then because you both have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I guess it varies from situation to situation about what those priorities might be and how they need to align. And then you can start to think about, well, culturally, how do those things change because of that? And I think the way we think about things is, as a culture, influences a lot of what happens. Because, quite honestly, a lot of times architects are fighting against the mainstream culture. And then now we see, contemporary work becoming more accepted or whatever. But, it's all this kind of process that happens through that to get people to that place on it. But yeah, I can remember years ago. It's also something that you were talking about earlier that made me think about what level of respect do architects have, do builders have within the society here, because the attitude of your average person on the street to an architect and what an architect is and what an architect does is absolutely different, say, than if you go to Mexico.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Than if you go to Europe. It's very, very different. Very different. And then different countries in Europe too, as well. Right? Because there's a level of respect and trust that's given in some of those countries that certainly is not given here.
Absolutely.
Now, what do you think that's always been the case, or do you think that's slowly our trust has slowly diminished over time in the U.S.?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think it's a couple of things that culturally in Europe, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to, there's an elitist, there's a classist situation that goes on, right? And so a lot of the folks that are in the professional field, doctors, lawyers, architects, there is just a respect that's built into the culture with that. Here, somehow the architects have fallen out of that. And I think we've done it to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
That professional class, doctors, architects, lawyers, whatever. But also in this country, we've tried to break down, or we've made the illusion to break down the elitist class. And so a lot of people think, oh, man. I remember just a small example is sitting in my little studio that was in Hyde Park. I don't know if you remember that little studio. It had this jalousie windows that are on it, right? So you can hear everything that goes through. Some folks walking by one day and somebody going, oh, an architect's office, how elitist. And I was like,
Really?
okay, whatever. I'm just going to continue to draw. And so so I think that is a lot. It says a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so you have this thing where if you hire an architect, well, what do I need to spend money hiring an architect for, where I can, engage a contractor and he's got a set of plans that I can buy from him for a couple of grand. And it's all, and for that matter, it's going to be a one-story plan that we don't have to deal with the 40-foot drop coming through here.
Right.
I remember reading in the paper years ago. This just infuriated me. This had to be 20 years ago. Austin paper said, first thing you do when you build a house, hire a contractor. No offense.
No, I get it. I get it.
And I was like, okay, well, what happened to
Well, sure.
thinking about engaging an architect to
Yeah.
help you to understand what you're really trying to do?
Yeah.
People don't really even, they don't understand what they're trying to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing that goes back with scraping the freaking hill country, and you're putting up a foundation that's 25, 35 feet in the air and all this concrete that comes around. You know what kind of project I could do with that kind of concrete?
Yeah.
But everybody tells me I can't afford it. But man, you're putting a fucking 25, 35-foot foundation with concrete walls. Why can't I afford concrete?
Well, we're we're out of time, but is there anything that you want to leave us with? Any, what is MJ? Any final
Why
thoughts?
can't I afford concrete?
Yeah. I'm going to ask myself the same thing because I'm building on a hill.
I have a question for you to wrap up. Where do you think Austin goes in the next 20 years? You were here arguably a lot longer than I was, and you saw kind of the early. When did you move to Austin?
Well, I've been coming to Austin literally all my life. I mean, I used to come down here as a kid because my uncle was a colonel in the Marine Corps and
Okay.
commanded the contingent of Marines that were down
Yeah.
here. So I'd come down here. But I moved down here. First time I moved down here was 85 or 86, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, 85 or 86.
So you've seen an interesting kind of cycle, right?
I've seen around. As a kid coming down here, I was seeing the overpasses downtown.
Yeah.
On 35 being built. So yeah,
Oh,
I've seen a lot of stuff going on.
You talk to a lot of people about what makes Austin special and keep Austin weird. It's the mix of different cultures that have made their way here, and so arguably that's even being hyper kind of driven now with a lot more people moving to Austin. And so do you think it's going to keep its same kind of like specialness?
I think it lost the vibe a long time ago.
How long ago?
For me, it was probably, this is something I've done a lot of thinking about actually, and been really curious on myself of why.
Yeah.
I can't put a finger on it, but it's probably 2005-ish.
Man, that's right when I moved here.
Yeah. It's your fault.
No, it's weird because when I first moved to Austin, I loved it. I mean, I just love, well, especially when I moved back from LA.
Yeah.
Right. Because I was here in the mid 80s and then moved to LA in 87, then moved back to Austin in 89.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, I adored this place.
Yeah.
And I would go on vacations. I couldn't wait to get back
Mm-hmm.
home to Austin. And somewhere along the way, I fell out of love with it.
Mm.
And I don't know why, really. And I've thought about this a lot, and I can't put my finger on it. I'm not sure. So, no, I think that vibe is gone for sure. And I don't want to be this guy, oh, back in the day, it was so much better. No, it's just different, right?
Yeah.
And cities have growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in Dallas, when I was a kid, I really used to like Dallas, and maybe it's because I was from a kid and just having that experience. But then in the 80s, I went through some serious, serious growing pains, and I just detested Dallas.
Yeah.
And then it got better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't go back to Dallas now very often, so I don't know really what it's like now. But I think there's some very serious growing pains that Austin's going to continue to go through. I think there's some things about it that are getting better, that are interesting. I think the food scene can be really quite interesting. It's just so damn expensive,
Yeah.
right? Which is a real problem for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, just food in general and the pricing of food, not just in the restaurants. I think there's serious issues not only facing Austin, but facing us as a society that be really interesting to see what happens in the next 20 years on this sort of thing. But the vibe, no, and I mean, you can still find some interesting things going on in Austin and sort of the old school stuff, but it's different. It's just different. I mean, there's some cool stuff going on, and maybe some of it has to do with age too,
Sure.
right? And back when I was in my 20s and early 30s and whatever, and just partying my ass off, those are that's a really different situation
Sure.
than then you have, all of a sudden you got a kid, you got these other responsibilities to deal with, and then then you start becoming, God, I hate to say it, but a little older, and then you have other things that you're having to deal with that stuff. And so maybe it's not just the city, but it's one's attitude that that they bring towards the city and the situation and how they're going to be involved with the city, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming.
Yeah,
MJ.
thank you very much.
This is awesome. Yeah,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Of
It's always
course.
good spending time with you.
Indeed.
All right.
Well, there we go.